Hey now YouTube, and welcome to a brand new series. You're looking at the Red Sea Reefer 170, and in this series we're not only going to build it, we're going to modify the sump, we're going to cycle it, we're going to aquascape it, and a lot more. And of course we're going to at one point review the Red Sea Reefer 170. Now, in my previous 4 videos that I've already posted on my channel, I go through the importance of cycling a saltwater tank with live rock and the benefits that come with it. Well, I'm completely contradicting myself this time around because I thought to myself, I want to try to cycle a saltwater tank with dry rock. And on top of that, I also want to try the method of putting a piece of dead shrimp to start the nitrogen cycle and create some ammonia in the system. Those are 2 things that I have never ever done, and I've always advocated against it because I thought it was the least efficient method. So what better way than to start a new series than to contradict everything I've ever believed in when it comes to cycling a saltwater tank and see what it is, learn from it, and hopefully deliver that information to you guys. So let's get started. First step, before anything, you need to build an aquascape. All right on. So here we are in the workshop, and you guys are gonna get used to this place because part of owning a reef tank actually brings a lot of DIY projects. I mean, this is one of the reasons why I actually really love this hobby. I get to, get my hands dirty and create all sorts of, either ingenious things or, complete failures sometimes even. So the first thing we're going to do before we start aquascaping is we're actually going to map out the entire tank itself on my workbench here. And I'm going to use 2-inch painter's tape. And the reason why I'm using 2-inch painter's tape is to create a perimeter. This is going to allow me to make sure that I have plenty of room on the sides of the rock to access the tank, whether to fix a coral, to adjust maybe some of the aquascaping while the actual aquarium is active. Also, it's going to allow me or give me plenty of room to fit any sort of instruments as well, whether it be a cleaning scraper, a sponge, or one of those magnetic window cleaners, and etc. The second thing that I'm actually going to do is I'm going to duplicate my overflow box and my back wall. And of course this is to be able to know the exact measurement as I'm building my rock structure in case I need to go around, if I want to do kind of a staircase around the actual overflow box itself. But really this is just going to help me understand where my limits are. Okay, so I want to talk about why I decided to go down this direction and take this format. I understand that not everyone is going to take it to this extreme. Actually, I've never even seen it done this way before. I just kind of thought ahead and I said to myself, I know for a fact that this being my 4th tank, the most frustrating part to this is by far the aquascaping for me personally. And why I'm saying this is because I've built tons of different aquascapes, and 2 or 3 months down the road, you're moving something and it moves by about ½ an inch and then everything kind of comes apart, and it is insanely frustrating. So number 1, what I'm going to do is I'm going to putty every single rock joints out there. So the 2 rocks that are going to be together are going to be fused. So with that said, I will also acrylic stick them. So I will drill the rocks, insert these acrylic sticks, and putty everything together so that the entire structure or the entire rockscape is one piece. Okay, so the rule of thirds, quite simple. If you want to know more about it, I suggest that you read up on it and you Google it and you look at some better examples than what I'm about to discuss. Rule of thirds is very simple. The idea, or the philosophy I should say, is to have your subjects or to have visual points intersect with these lines. So whether it be at the bottom of the tank or vertically into the tank or horizontally as well, that you should have, say, a big rock structure that kind of comes down and then maybe another one right here and then possibly even one towards the bottom, a little thing. So I'm going to try and follow this as loosely as possible. And the reason why I say this is quite simple. Rule of thirds typically applies to a wider frame. This being a cube, or almost a cube I should say, being 24 by 20 inches deep, it makes it very difficult to apply the rule of thirds. However, it's still very possible, and it's still going to allow me to have a good point of reference while I'm building this aquascape. The real question is, are we actually going to do some aquascaping today? And the answer is quite simply, yes, absolutely, right now. I can't wait to stop recording this segment and start putting rocks together. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually going to, maybe shoot a little bit of a time lapse, and I'm going to time how long all of this is taking me to get roughly an idea of the direction that I want to go into. I don't have a vision. I don't have something that I drew out. If you're capable of drawing some good 3D kind of images, then I suggest that you do that for sure. However, for me, my process is very different. I prefer just starting to stack rocks. I have a bit of an idea of what I want to do. I want something that goes high almost to the water line, large on the left side, and then possibly something aesthetically very pleasing kind of on the right side, and then single island, possibly a second small island on the sand bed. All right, so day 2 of the aquascape. So I actually had to walk away from this and come back the next day to see how I felt about it. And I can tell you that I absolutely love this particular aquascape. And I'm gonna walk you through my thought process. So the first thing I did before starting to build everything is I built a list of priorities. And here they are. Priority number 1, corals, fish, and livestock. And what I mean by this is I want to make sure that the corals have plenty of room to grow and expand. And since this is going to be a mixed reef tank, I want to make sure that I have room for SPSs up at the top, some LPSs kind of in the center or even towards the bottom, some clams, zoo gardens on the left and on the right side. And I love the cascading, sharp rock effect. So it's going to create some shadows as well inside the tank. So softies, SPSs, LPSs, zoas, mushrooms, clams, all of this is covered in this particular aquascape. Number 2, I cannot stress this enough. Flow, 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 okay? You want to make sure that you don't create dead spots in terms of flow, so that detritus doesn't actually create itself and doesn't start hiding inside your tank, raising your nitrates and your phosphates and your ammonia inside your tank. Number 3, functionality. And what I mean by this, and I touched a little bit on it in regards to having the coral placement being specific, but functionality in the sense that, can I reach everywhere, right? So can I put my tank, can I put my hand in the tank and start moving things around and not feel like it's insanely hard to get to certain places? And 4th, of course, is visual appeal. This is the time where you can break all the rules and forget about everything that I've ever talked about. This is where most sacrifice will start happening. And what I mean by this is, if coral is number 1, then you would just have a whole bunch of shelves everywhere and it would work perfectly fine. However, this being a very, very creative hobby, you want to be able to have a reflection of what your style is. My style, swim throughs, cascading effects, shelves or steps, and this time around I'm actually wrapping around the overflow box. My tank is going to sit right in the middle of the living room, and I'm mostly going to be looking at it from the right side as well. So I want to make sure that the majority of the action will happen from the right side. And you can see here I have tons of room for all of the corals that I really want to have. Moving on to actually fusing the rocks together and making sure that this becomes a very, very solid structure. Because in total, I believe that I have somewhere around 13 or 14 rocks. If I was to leave them like this, I can guarantee you that the rock set would move. By the time I move everything up to the tank, place corals in, etc., I'm going to lose this actual aquascape. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start fusing. I actually already have started fusing some of the rocks, and I'm going to show you. So I got some epoxy right here, some epoxy behind here, and it dried overnight, making this a very solid structure. I also have this piece right here that didn't belong to this particular rock, and it's kind of holding up in the air, and I really like this style. So epoxy and acrylic sticks gives you the ability to do structures that typically you wouldn't see, or it would be extremely difficult to find at your local fish store, because it's such a unique look to it. So I'm gonna take this rock right here, for example, so I can show you that I've epoxied everything together. These were two pieces, and now it's perfectly epoxied together. And this piece will go right almost like so. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna find the connecting points, the 2 points that really touch the most on the inside of the rocks. And I'm going to flatten these with a file. The second thing is I'm going to see where the 2 intersecting points are. And I'm going to visualize that this acrylic stick will go in here. I'm going to drill a hole through here, then I can start doing the epoxy. And there you have it, guys. Step 2, we are modifying the sump. Step 3, we're adding a piece of dead shrimp to see if it'll kickstart the nitrogen cycle and add some ammonia to the tank. So stick around and let's see what happens. I'll obviously document all the results and the progression of this Red Sea Reefer 170. So until then, happy reefing.